Would you still call this a protest? Is that the word you would use, or has it turned into something else?
No, I will describe it as a revolution, actually. There are all marks that this is a new revolution in Iran. There's a new beginning in Iran. Look, there has been protests for the last 3 weeks in more than 170 cities throughout the country, in all 31 provinces. And you can see people from all walks of life and all age groups are now involved, all calling for the end of this regime, death to Khamenei, death to the dictator. And obviously, the regime has come down with a heavy crackdown. At least 400 protesters have been killed, according to the information provided by the network of the People's Mujahideen Organization of Iran, which has been playing a key role in organizing and leading these protests. And at least 20,000 protesters have been arrested. Yet the protests continue with the same demand. As you said, first university students joined, and now high school students have joined. So it's quite a popular movement with women, especially young women, taking the lead. And this is a very, very different Iran we are talking about.
A very different Iran, and as you say, these scenes are extraordinary, huge protests, which you describe as a revolution. And you said at the start, new beginnings. But do you think that all of this can actually change anything, can lead to new beginnings? And if so, how does that happen?
Definitely it will. As I said, this is the culmination of 40 years of the Iranian people's resistance against tyranny, against corruption, against misogyny, against a regime that has deprived the Iranian people, particularly women, from their most rudimentary rights. And you have to remember, there's an organized resistance in Iran called, as I said, People's Mujahideen Organization of Iran. There is a coalition called the National Council of Resistance of Iran, which acts like the parliament in exile. And there's a leader called Mrs. Mariam Rajavi, who will be the president-elect when the regime is overthrown. Actually, the momentum will add and add and add. And at one point, people and their protests, led by the resistance units, will overwhelm the regime. 3 weeks ago, who would have thought that this will continue for 3 weeks? And this time, as I said, you have it in all over the country. You have young people, old people, particularly in big cities. And you have to remember, in Iran, always the change comes from big cities. And this time in Tehran, on some nights and some days, you have protests in 30, 40, 50 locations. So I think from all the markings, this is we are seeing the end of this regime. In what shape and form and when, it's just a matter of being established. But as I said, there's definitely a different Iran, a very different situation.
So your sense is that even though, as you mentioned, there have been protests across Iran on and off for all that time, 40 years, this is different. This is what you described as a culmination of all of that.
Exactly. As I said, if you look at the age groups, you can see the demography. If you see how widespread it is, you see young people, old people, you see people, middle class, even poor people have joined this time. Women, very different universities have joined in. And their slogans, the unanimity of the slogans, all now targeting the regime as its pinnacle, the supreme leader, saying that, we don't want the Shah or the leader, we don't want any oppressor. So this is a very, very different. If one listens to the slogans of the people, you see they're demanding nothing but the overthrow of the regime and establishing a democratic republic, a secular one. And I have to add that all they're asking the international community to do is to defend their right to resist, to recognize their right to resist and defend themselves and bring about a regime change by themselves, for themselves. And I think the international community is behoved to do this and be on the side of the Iranian people and reject this regime totally. And as I said, explicitly recognize the right of the Iranian people to resist and to bring about a regime change for themselves.